the agenda. Do what? Agenda, you have the agenda before you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? So move. I have a motion from Mason Blake, Commissioner Blake. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Otto. All those in favor of adopting the agenda signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Ayes have it. Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you and Darlene, whoever's going to present the budget so that we can start talking about it. Folks, you're getting ready to see sausage being made.
And it's,
I want you to know, I missed my class.
and as you noted, Mayor, sausage is not very pretty being made.
No, it's not.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners and those in attendance. This budget has been presented by staff or prepared by staff in due consideration of a number of factors. First, looking at the revenue streams that are proposed for the July 1, 2022, ending June 30th, 2023 fiscal year. Also looking at the anticipated expenditures that the town will need to incur to operate in a fiscally responsible manner. With that, you have in your hands both a hard copy and electronic copy of the proposed budget that was prepared again by city staff. And would like to commend all the staff members, especially the department heads, but it took an entire team, all the employees, to put their needs together for consideration. Put it into your hands tonight for your review. And of course, the June 9th already scheduled public hearing will occur at the regular meeting for public input. There are some highlights that you will note in your agenda packet that staff would ask y'all to consider and review. But this budget, first and foremost, it does not include a tax increase to our community, nor does it include any fee increases from the past fiscal year or the current fiscal year. With that having said, it does allocate funding for the resurfacing of Oklahoma Street. Also funding, and this has been a concern by many of the commissioners as well as citizens and residents of this community. Includes funding for the Texas Road Bridge conversion. Also in the police department, the purchase of 6 body cameras as well as a patrol vehicle. Also 2 portable generators for the well or water system, along with the 5-year cleaning and inspection for our water tanks. It also includes a 2% cost of living adjustment, as well as up to 3% merit increases for all of our employees. And with that having said, with these funds, taking in consideration of the current economic climate that Montreat and the rest of the country is experiencing, we've allowed for inflationary cost in the operation expenses. And you will note in your agenda packet actual cost year to date, and you'll see how they compare with the proposed budget. There is a 4.5% increase in the water fund, expenditures and revenues, along with a 14% increase in the general fund, with the overall increase with both funds around 12, 13%. And as you can see with the current year expenditures, it somewhat mirrors the actual expenses. And Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'll turn it over for any questions of staff.
Okay, Commissioners, hopefully you've had a chance to review the budget. We've had it for a couple of days now. And any questions or comments to staff? Yeah. Kitty, go ahead.
Are we just going to go page by page? Is that the way you're going to do it?
No.
No?
If that's the way you want to do it, we can.
I think I'd rather just flip through page by page and stop for questions. Is that not a good idea?
That's fine. Whatever you want to do. It's a workshop.
Instead
So
of flipping back and forth.
Could I ask one question to both Darlene and to you, Ben? What is your confidence level in these numbers on a 0 to 100% scale for both revenues and expenses?
Uh,
And I know it's a
That's
wag.
yeah. You never know. We're living in uncertain times with the economy, fuel costs, inflation. So, but to your point in your question, I would go with a 92% favorability.
On both revenues and expenses.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I would tend to agree with that. For me, I would say I'm more comfortable, and I hate to put it this way, but I'm more comfortable with a 14 to 15% increase in the expense side than I am on the revenue side. Because the expenditures, we have seen them steadily increase. The revenues are more sporadic and more dependent on the economy, whereas we've already felt the effect of the economy on the expenditure side.
That's a good point.
any other questions? Well, I'll start covering page by page. I'm starting on page 8. The revenues, you see 2,074,556, and expenditures are the same. And any questions on the revenue side?
On the revenue side, what is community service fee?
That's what MRA gives us. They're expecting a higher occupancy rate this year. And it's not just the hotel. It's even the young people attending conferences and so forth. If they have a head on a bed that night, we get a percentage of that, a dollar, I think it is, $1 per head per bed. So if the kid's here 5 nights, we're getting. So I didn't realize that, but that's all their buildings.
And Mayor and Commissioner Alexander, I would say in my conversations with representatives of the MRA, that number of $35,000, I was told that's a guaranteed number and it could increase. So that was, we placed a conservative number.
Darlene, can you refresh my memory? I know you and I went over this the past 2 years in light of COVID, and we were trying to, when the economy shut down. The numbers that you have projected here based off of sales tax and the revenue that we look for, how is that lining up to pre-COVID numbers? Again, I know that's kind of a tough one on the spot, but do you know?
Okay, so the numbers for sales tax and franchise tax and all of those types of revenues that we get in, most of those numbers I got directly from the North Carolina League of Municipalities. They're benchmarks, and of course, they're relying on just formulas and what they think the economy will do. Overall, they had projected a greater increase the first year of after COVID, and now they're decreasing it slightly. So we're not quite where we were before COVID, but we're much closer than we were, say, last fiscal year.
Okay.
Plus, with inflation, your sales tax money should go up. Of course, that'll wash here because it's based on percentage of sales.
Well, the sales tax money, yes, it should increase. However, the other side of the sales tax is we received so much more in sales tax than we anticipated in 2021 and 22 because of the stimulus payments.
Right.
People went out and bought mattresses and, whatever they needed as opposed to paying bills, but that generated sales tax for us. That supposedly is stopping. And so that's where the negative comes in. That's where we get hit a little bit.
And
Thank
can
you.
you remind me, thank you for that. Can you remind me on the proceed from debt service at 3,300? What? Down on the last right side at the bottom.
And at the bottom. We're still on the general fund?
Yeah.
Public safety charge.
Was that, did I look at the wrong one?
Oh, public safety
Yeah, I'm sorry.
charges?
Oh, yeah, public safety charges.
Okay.
3,300.
That's revenue that we received from what's it called? William Black Lodge. Christ Community Church, are they? Yes. So
Okay.
they pay us for public safety
okay.
services and we bill them quarterly.
Very good, thank you.
Surprised to see that people aren't drinking anymore this coming year.
Under building permits, are we putting anything in the budget in anticipation of the hotel?
We increased our professional fees from $45,000 to $60,000. This was based on conversations with our legal team.
What about the building permits? $45,000 for building permits. Does
Yeah.
that,
But we were basing that on the, talking with our building inspector and looking at real numbers from this fiscal year as well.
does it contain anything about the hotel anymore?
No, no.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I misunderstood your
yeah,
question.
I wasn't clear. Thank you.
I know that Tom and Darlene, I think Ben had a conversation not long ago, putting money back in the reserve fund. Did y'all ever resolve what monies we have pending from the building of this building and the other building that might be able to go back into the fund?
Yes, we started to talk about it and I'm actually in the process of reconciling everything that went into the building. Because when the thought of building a new building started, there was land that was purchased and that's in one account. It's not where it should be. There were permits, there were engineering fees, so on and so forth that I have to gather and put in the right place before we can say, okay, this is it, this is the bottom line, and now we can move the money. I actually did talk to the auditors today to try to eliminate as many of the special revenue and capital project funds as possible so that we can move the excess money into fund balance and remove all of those other obligations that we have. They're in agreement with me that that's going to take a little bit of time. So they're already to the point where they are finalizing the 2021 audit. They're going to have the financial statements to me June 1st for review. And then we're rolling right into the 22 audit.
Right.
So it won't be until fiscal 23 that we'll be able to write them off. But we are in the process and definitely the town hall is one of the funds that we're reconciling.
Well, I appreciate Tom for recognizing that and for y'all working on it. And certainly we don't want to pay those funds out prematurely and then turn around and have to do something with them again. So, okay, thank you. Any other questions on the revenue or expense side? Do you want to look at the fee schedule page 11?
I have one question.
Okay.
When we were talking about how much we charge for, and this is a Jared question, maybe we don't need Jared here to answer it, but I had suggested that instead of a fixed price, that we have a cost plus a certain percent because the cost of hooking up water to a new client is so flexible. Barry, do you know that?
Back
they're based off of, well, it's not gonna vary, but just pennies in between different customers. If we had to put a tap in, that's figured an average foot of pipe, maybe a couple of feet short one way or the other. But all your other hardware, your set, your meter and everything's gonna be a standard rate. The only thing that'll change is a few dollars as far as the piping in the ground coming from the main where we set a meter. And we try to set it as close as possible. Because whatever that distance is, we're responsible for. So we like to stay as close to that main as we can. So that's about as tight as an average as we could come up with across the board for a residential tap.
Is there a labor fee built into that, Barry?
I did figure some man hours in it.
Okay,
Yeah, I figured about a half a day.
okay.
So we're not losing money anymore on taps?
No, man,
Okay, good.
we're not making, we're breaking even. It's what I come up with.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions on the fee schedule that we've adopted? Because when we adopt the budget, we adopt the fee schedule also. Is that right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
On page 12 at the top, it says new construction or renovation over $1 million. It says 0.3% for each additional $100,000. Is that right? 0.3%
Yeah, for each additional $1 million.
or each additional $1 million?
Other questions on rates? Page 13, I'm on page 13, looking at the fees there. Questions or comments on any of those? Okay. Now, looking at page 14, I believe it is, got the schedule of revenues down there. How much we get. It's comparing fiscal year 2021 to fiscal year 22, 23, excuse me, Tom. I was just looking at 14, is the last page.
David, there are no speeding fines. Is that because it's a state thing?
Water fund, revenues on the water fund.
And late fees are going down because people are paying more timely
Yes,
now?
sir.
Because
Yeah, that beautiful letter.
Because we cut them off too. Uh, Salaries and wage expenses, starting on the next page.
does the professional services, the audit portion of that, is that the entire cost of the audit, or have you got it divided between a couple of departments? And Josh?
Yeah, it's our audit cost. I'm Josh.
Who's shot?
You made it in the budget, Josh.
Thank you, Josh.
Which department are we on?
Next page. It starts with personnel services up top.
For administration. Did we allow for a possible salary increase to attract a new?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the approximate portion of, have we got in here for
$85,000 is what has been budgeted for the next administrator or manager. And the other benefits would reflect that amount as well.
Mr. Mayor, this has been a topic of discussion between Ben and myself, as well as Ben and Mason and myself. We were paying our previous administrator 43,000. And Ben thinks that
Excuse me.
I'm sorry,
83.
83,000. So this is just a $2,000 increase for a title increase. And hopefully one of the major reasons that we're looking at the change in form of government is to be able to recruit more effectively. Earlier today, Ben and I were talking about what it would take to increase this to a point. And then Mason and I were talking about something else that he suggested, and it's a great idea. And you want to?
Well, sure, Tom. In looking at the budget, candidly, and you go like zoning. The zoning department, the salary, part-time salary we pay for zoning is over $60,000 a year.
66.5.
66.5, that's just salary, that's not other stuff, but it's contract labor. So it's not a lot of extra on top of that.
For 24 hours a week.
The fact is, if you go and you look at our administrative reports, and in the last 6 months, we've had 5 zoning permits. That's an average 10 a year. That divides into $6,000 plus zoning. And I think one of the things we need to consider, and one of the reasons we're going about looking at the town manager form of government is to get someone with a bit more experience and a broader range of experience. And I think it came to me, and I talked about it with Tom. Why don't we take a look and see if we can hire a town manager who also has enough planning and zoning experience to handle those duties as well, assuming that we believe one person can do both jobs. And so we called Ben. And Ben, what was your answer?
Well, my answer is it has been done. Actually, I did it for several years at a duty station in the city of Lowell, where I wore both hats, both city manager and planning director. So it has been done and can be done.
And I bet you had a lot more activity in Lowell than we do here in the,
Yeah, because we were in that growth
Yep.
stage there, getting the greater Charlotte area. I also shared with Commissioner Blake and Commissioner Whitmer, there is also another side to that story too, but sometimes you have what they call good cop, bad cop. The zoning administrator can act as the bad cop, and then your town manager acts as a mediator sometimes between the two parties. So I want to make everyone cognizant that there are good sides, but it can be done. It's not impossible. And it's a good way to look at a well-rounded candidate as well. And I would think a lot of your applicants would have a strong either knowledge or background in planning and zoning, just from personal experience.
Ben, I know that you and the mayor had talked about this previously. You're working 3 days a week as our town administrator.
Yes, sir.
With someone, maybe not of your level of experience, but general experience, could this job be done properly and do service to this town 3 days a week?
Are you talking about the administrator's job?
Or manager's job, depending upon what we do with the form of government?
Short answer, yes, but I think you're going to limit yourself to the number of applicants you'll get from looking at a part-time existence.
But if we rolled the zoning administrator job into it at 2 days a week,
Oh, yes, I
or
think, yes.
16 hours a
Oh,
week.
yes, sir. I think there'd be ample enough time. There'll be weeks or days where you'll spend more time on planning and zoning matters, obviously. I think we've seen that this past year. But then there'll be other weeks where planning and zoning will take a very far back seat. So, yes, sir. To answer your question, yes.
And what do you think I know you haven't done any research on it, but what do you think a salary for a manager with zoning, planning and zoning experience would cost this town?
Well, let me first say, I've been out of the loop for 4 years until coming back to Montreat. So a lot of changes may have taken place. I was actually kind of surprised at some of the salaries that managers are making now than what my peers and I made during our careers. Having said that, Montreat is in an area that people would love to live at. Now, the backside of that, it's a very expensive place to live. So with that in mind, you probably have to increase your salary a little bit more than what a town, say, in the Piedmont section of our state would pay, just because of the location and the cost of living requirements here. So a dollar amount, with wearing 2 hats, I think you could attract a candidate around that 85, 90,000. It's a stiff competition in this world we have right now. So, but I think you could attract just because of the environmental area Montreat lays in.
So Commissioner Blake, I think that's a great observation you made there as far as the number of permits. And when I came on roughly 6, 7 years ago, the numbers, if memory serves me correctly, weren't a lot different. There's only X amount of growth permits and stuff that's going to be happening here in Montreat. So I'm in agreement there. And when our full-time planning and zoning person left, that's when we changed that position and took it down to part-time, and that's seemingly worked well. And anytime I think we can find places to bring in some collaboration and save money at the same time, I think that's wonderful. So I like that. Again, this is the first time I've heard this tonight. So for an old guy like me, I'm gonna have to chew on it a little bit. But I guess my reservation is, I think in that, because I've seen the fact that if you don't, even if it's small numbers, if you don't cross your T's and dot your I's in that department, it can get the town in hot water. So I want to make sure we would have the person that had the knowledge there. And then if it's a combined post, again, is that something that can be done well? And I appreciate your comment on, in a sense, sometimes you need that good cop, bad cop type scenario. But that would be my thought, to just process that a little bit. But I love the thought of the cost savings.
And Commissioner Otto, that's a good point you raised, but let me also say that there's a lot of assets out here for municipal staff. North Carolina, and I think maybe it was you, Mayor, Commissioner Whitmer, and well, all of you know that North Carolina is praised throughout the union for their local government setup and structure. And one of the reasons why we have such good local governments in North Carolina are the resources that are available. The School of Government, the North Carolina League of Municipalities. They're huge helpmates. They hold your hand through every problem you could ever come up with. This region is blessed with the Land of Sky Regional Council of Government. Those are other assets that you don't have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak. So whatever candidate looking at this position, there's a lot of assets out there to help that individual.
To Kent's point, you're right. We need to think about it. Certainly something that we shouldn't decide on tonight. The good news is that we've got $151,000 between those two positions budgeted. And if we take action one way or the other and decide to merge the two positions, we actually would have some kind of a savings. We have to do a budget amendment, but do those all the time.
Yeah, I'm not proposing tonight we do anything.
Well, we couldn't. We're
But
doing a
talking
budget
today,
tonight.
It sounded like this is something we ought to look into.
No, again, I appreciate both your thoughts and Commissioner Whitman's. I think it's a good thought.
Any other questions or comments? Those are all good thoughts.
I have one question. Well, it may be me a comment, not a question, but it seemed like telephone came up a lot and we pay over $15,000 a year for telephone connection. Is that normal? In the age that most people don't even have a copper line anymore.
Most of that goes through, it's our cellular phones. So,
Oh, that includes cellular
yes,
phones? Okay.
Public Building Department. Insurance from 377 down to 24/7.
Did you hear back from BB&T?
about the rental, I'm sorry, I did not.
That line item was just way over budgeted last year.
Okay. And then the same thing on the utilities from 10 to 8. And, okay. All right. That answers that question. Thank you, ma'am.
Could I ask a question? Darlene, what is the interfund transfer of $92,000?
What we do is we take 8% of the budgeted expenditures of various departments that spend on, that charges should really be made to water and they're not. For example, and this is just off the top of my head, Debbie,
Okay, so
who's our billing
these are
clerk.
the accumulated indirects?
right,
Okay, got it,
right.
got it, sorry. All right, thank you. Okay.
I'm in the administrative department looking at it right now. Any questions on that? Moving along to the police department. Okay.
Administration, the 15,000 increase for professional services, was that for
Attorney fees.
contemplated attorney fees?
Yes.
Just wanted to double check that.
I hope we have a lot left over this year. Police department.
Should we hold discussion on the capital projects to the end, or you want to take it with each department?
No, we can take it as we go.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, you'll note in the capital outlay for the police department, there's one patrol vehicle as well as the purchase of 6 body cams. Body cams would be paid out of general fund revenues with 28,000 of a $38,000 vehicle would come from ARPA funds. 10,000 would come from the general fund revenues as well.
I only had an issue with capital funds as it relates to other capital funds. So, I mean, it may be better to talk about this capital funds, but you know, just in terms of prioritizing what we need to do with our capital funds, it seemed to me, you know, that a patrol vehicle, whether we absolutely have to have one this year, is a question. And body cams, I candidly, with all due respect, I just don't see whether there's a crying need for body cams for our officers. We make half a traffic stop a day. And I just don't see where 6 body cams, that's traffic stops. That's what we do more of that than anything else, sort of, and we do half of one a day. It's, I saw the numbers there, there's not a lot, and that's fine. I'm happy with it. I just goes back to how bad do we need body cams in terms of the capital budget that's got other things. I'm just not objecting to it or objecting to police cars. What do we put in line? And that's why, that's my comments on the police department. I've got on other capital budgets, but again, it's a priority issue.
So Chief, you've been gracious to give me some time, and we've discussed this, and you and I over the past 2 or 3 years have discussed vehicles. And I know there's a sort of a rotation in the way that we've brought vehicles online and then decommissioned vehicles. With that being said, I'm just so the whole commission knows where I'm coming from, I still look at the unfortunate amount of money we're spending on the lawsuit. That's real dollars that we've spent, somewhere 120 to 130. Who knows where that's going to land? And so I look at that like I would my own personal budget. That's money that we've spent. So where can I find places? And I knew all the departments have really whittled down things, and I appreciate that. But I still think, you know, that's money spent, and we might have to bite our lip this year and potentially kick something down the road. And that being said, I've kind of looked at that a little bit with the patrol car. And, you know, I don't know where we're going as a nation with this whole push for electric. And, you know, are we going to get to the point where in a year or two, you know, there's going to be mandates where municipalities have to have X amount of electric vehicles out there? Again, I don't know, not suggesting it will or won't happen, but again, 38,000, and I look at, you know, we roughly 125,000 less what we had budgeted, 45,000 for lawyer fees. I'm trying to find 85,000 in the budget. Again, my rationale might be different from others, but where can we find that? And there's roughly 40,000 of that. And I hate that it, you know, again, as my brother's police officer, I've talked to him on the pros and the cons of vehicles. I just think it's one of those things that we might need to, in light of so many things going on in our nation with inflation, gas prices and stuff, to push that one more year. So that's sort of my stance. Body cams. I guess the president signed yesterday a body cam thing, but I think that's for federal officers only. But you know, I found that interesting that was signed into law or whatever yesterday, I do believe. So, you know, a body cam is going to be something that all officers have to have in the future. You know, I don't know. If you were a federal police officer, I think you have to have them. That being said, I'm sort of on the fence with that 6,000.
Maybe we need an education day to tell us a little more about how you'd use them. And do you need 6 just to have them recharging, or why would you need 6 of them?
The only thing I want to say on body cams is one incident could cost this town a fortune. One incident, one little incident that's not documented could cost, because it's a he said, she said, and a lot of times. And y'all know how it gets here sometimes.
Mayor, could I also add that it's been my experience, body cams are one of the best tools in policing today. First and foremost, it weeds out a bad cop. You've got a problem officer, show up. Second of all, it can save the town. And if $6,000 could be a small pittance to pay if something were to come down without having that body camera image. Again, I'll leave it up to the commissioners and to decide, but it's a very helpful tool, not only for our police, our community, but also for our town organization as well.
Dave?
Well, Mr. Mayor, you actually hit the mark precisely in talking about mitigation of liability. Just one incident that cost us far more than $6,000 because it is going to come down to he said, she said. It's about documentation, transparency and operation, that sort of thing there. As far as mandatory wear of body cams, departments that do not issue those and do not have a policy on how they're operated on a day-to-day basis is an incredible minority now. Few and far between agencies don't have those simply because of the realization. Somebody comes and says, you know, Officer so-and-so, I was on a traffic stop and he said this and he touched that, and then he stole the other, you know, and having that footage there can quickly make that situation go away, exonerate the officer. Or if an officer is in the wrong, make that officer go away very quickly. So yeah, it does come down to a liability thing. You know, I've been asked for years if we had, before the proliferation of body cams, which has been around for some time now, but years ago, you know, do y'all have cameras in your vehicles? You know, because everybody's used to seeing the chase footage and stuff like that on television. You know, it's like, well, we don't engage enough in that to warrant something like that. However, person-to-person engagement or other people, you know, that comes heavily into play. It's something I've thought about for years, and it was something, if we ever, you know, took a more active role in the college, that was my red line right there. Like, oh, that's absolutely when we need to start pursuing something like that. But we're getting more and more population, more and more engagement, more, you know, engaging with calls for service with Black Mountain and things like that. So again, with a growing, more litigious society, I think it's just a good tool to have in the box. And also touching on the vehicle cams, that's going to double sort of the same thing. If you know, you're involved in a chase or something like that, flip that thing on.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've said enough right there for me. If it's something that protects you and the rest of the officers from litigation or whatever, as well as protects the town, and you know, that's a good $6,000 insurance policy.
Well, we've sort of had about a 2-year trial run of this, starting back in 2020, and I forget which month there. Black Mountain had approached us because of our officers engaging down there, particularly the nighttime officers. You know, that's more when you're prone to domestic calls and things like that. They asked, you know, what do you think if we basically issued your department a camera, you know? And it's like, sure, let's give this a try. It's a low cost, actually, it's a no cost way to see how this is going to work for us. My big concern was just having one camera. You know, it's not going to take long before some knucklehead forgets to take it off his vest and take it home. I was the first knucklehead and had to explain to the other officer, I'll bring it back on Monday, sorry. Then we got to the point of having to, you know, one of them went down. We asked for a replacement, and then another one anyway. We arrived with a number of 6, the same way we arrived with number 6 for our handheld radios. Everybody's got one, and we've got one spare or for reserve that's working. That kind of covers us for one goes down. Okay, y'all are sharing, but also that's nobody's coming up with that. I didn't get that traffic stop on camera because officer on the other shift had that with them or didn't charge it or whatever. Another thing with that price tag that's coming in, that's just buying the cameras as a standalone. Usually with the operation of body cams, it's buying the equipment, the cameras, but you're also buying a subscription service. So everything's being uploaded to the cloud. That can be disseminated to the DA's office or requesting newspaper WLOS or something like that. We don't generate enough footage for that. At least I don't believe so, not at this time. So we're going to try to handle everything in-house with a standalone hard drive, just to store our own stuff, and we'll just operate that just like we would the evidence room.
Thank you, David. Any other questions of David?
So the officers have to activate them.
Yes, that's a manual. You'll see, you ever see them kind of thumbing it like that, whether it was flipping that little lens cover down, that activates it. With the traditional models now, it's just like anything else. There's more and more stuff on the market. So you may have a press of a button or slide this or touch that. Technology is getting honestly really cool with those things, but unfortunately it comes with a price tag that I don't think we're in that arena yet. You'll see that that's coming on board with Buncombe County Sheriff's Office very soon, that their body cameras are actually interconnected, networked with their radio, with their taser, with their gun. So just simply unholstering your rifle will automatically activate that camera if it's not physically activated by the officer. Again, really cool things there, but it does come with a price tag. I don't think we're at that level.
Are there any that you could, I mean, if you wanted to check on what an officer's doing in the middle of the night or when somebody's here by themselves, can you activate it remotely?
Not for what we're looking at, and I'm sure
Doesn't
there's
look
probably a
appealing.
product out there that does that. I don't know how the officers would feel about it. Might get some issues when laboratory trips or something.
Well, I hadn't thought about that, but guess that could be a problem.
Any other questions of David? Thank you, David. Come on, go ahead.
I'll just comment. David and I had a discussion earlier, and I don't have an issue with the body cams. I just have an issue with the patrol car. And I know David's been asking for this for a long time. We've got 4 vehicles or 5, David, including the Ford Escape. Okay, so we have 5 vehicles and 5 officers. I just don't think that we need to, with funds as scarce as they are and with different needs, that we need to use general funds and or ARPA funds that we could use for other projects to get a 6th vehicle. If you look at David's monthly reports, those vehicles are being driven on an average of 500 miles per month. So there's not a lot of mileage going on those vehicles. And I would say that we have a policy that they do not take the vehicles home, that they park them over there. If they did take them home, I can see how that might be a benefit, a motivating benefit for them, but that's not within our policy. Our policy is that they drive their personal cars, they drop them off, pick up the patrol car and go off. I don't see how that could be that much of a benefit, especially since all 5 officers do have their own personal vehicle right now. And I would vote against it.
The Escape was just a stopgap measure. That was a former planning and building inspector vehicle. Shortly stated, that's not a real police vehicle.
I guess the Chevy was needed.
For what it was to be treated like a mountain goat in snowy and icy weather, that vehicle was really good. I hated to lose that, but unfortunately, we were going to start driving it like the Flintstones once the floor started going. With the Explorer, there is nothing police rated, anything about that. It's not billed as that. It's not built as that. And I, for one, personally would not feel safe trying to do any sort of exigent driving in it, nor would I want any of the officers to do that either. Really, one thing about it, as far as asking for the vehicle, it sort of feels like tradition a little bit at this point. But just in keeping with the numbers that was decided on a few years ago, that the 10-year or 100,000 mile mark, was where that was going to be at. Obviously, we've had a couple of rough years with COVID and the income and all that sort of stuff there. And it's been necessary to put the brakes on that, the lawsuits, all the stuff we didn't see coming with the floods. So it's absolutely understandable to have to triage what our spending is going to be. But sooner or later, in keeping with that 100,000 miles or 10 years, if that's to be amended to 12 years, 120,000 miles or anything like that, we will have an accumulating problem with that. Vehicle I drive, it's the oldest in the fleet. It is at 10 years. The next one coming up will hit 10 years next year. Both of those are approaching 100,000. Just for some clarification on that.
Thank you, David. All right, I've moved on to planning and zoning page.
Well, does the commission wish to make any determination about the capital outlay projects for the police department this evening?
Can we take
How many,
them
how
all
many
at
people,
once?
how many commissioners want to buy the police vehicle? How many commissioners want to buy the police vehicle? Raise your hand or say yay.
I want to just make a comment.
Sure.
I understand 100,000 miles on a work vehicle. And I don't think we ought to, if we do not pass it or get it now, we do need to keep it on our radar in the future.
Yes, ma'am, I would agree.
All those in favor of a police vehicle, say aye. All those opposed? No. Okay.
Staff will note the changes in the.
Do you want to vote on the
amended.
body cams, or are we okay on body cams? How many commissioners want body cams? Say aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, I'm on planning and zoning now. Page. The $11,000 under capital outlay, is that the comprehensive plan?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. That's the only question I had on that page. Public Works Department. Harry, not gonna spend any money this year? Says capital outlay is 0. Okay.
Well, I was noticing that it was in the early pages. A chipper replacement we need, a dump truck we need, a street tractor we need, and then, the sidewalks, but just from your department, again, it's tough. And, to the police department, and I think Commissioner Alexander's point, we do need to be aware that these things do come up. And, we are kicking some of these down the road, but it's just kind of where we are. And again, I appreciate you removing some of that stuff. And I think sometimes we just have to make some tough decisions. And I feel like that's, again, where we are right now.
Given the current situation and the life we're in right now, I mean, that's understandable. That.
Well, I do, you guys, y'all will daggone rebuild a chipper in there, which I appreciate, and you're getting our stuff cleaned up and, but shoot, how much is the daggone chipper? 100,000?
Close.
Close. So again, they're tough things. So I appreciate all you guys tightening your belts, to keep the town going, even when the budget's tight.
Bear, have you looked at a cost comparison to vacuuming the leaves and the cost of dumping that versus the labor that you, and of course you'd have to buy a vacuum compared to what we're having to do now? That's empty the bags and the labor intensive portion of that.
It all boils down to disposal. When you vacuum these, it goes in, it chops it up, makes them all. We currently fight to go empty a vacuum trailer or empty a vacuum truck. It has to go to the landfill. The company that we contract our sanitation to haul the compactors, we spoke with them, they spoke with the landfill. Now they leave us an open top dumpster that Drew just takes a backhoe. We don't have to empty the leaves out anymore. We just pull them out of the truck. Usually he just uses a backhoe, picks them up, puts them in that compactor or the open top dumpster, calls them, they come and get them, and it's gone. It's all a matter of disposal. Nobody wants leaves. And two permitted sites that are very close by. One of them refused us straight off, and the other one let us dump leaves for just a little while until he started having trouble with the leaves wanting to catch fire, and he stopped us from doing that. So
And is MRA any closer to sorting the situation out up on Oklahoma?
the last I spoke with Mr. Quincy, I can circle back around to that, but
Thanks.
You know what they do with it in Gastonia? Ben does. They take the leaves and they mix it with dried waste from the sewer plant. They make black gold out of it and they sell it, don't they? They sell it. Well, and I bought a load one time. It's not free of wiregrass, I'll tell you that. My garden had more wiregrass that year. Last time I bought any, but they do. They sell it by the truckload. Okay, any other questions on to Barry? Barry, let me ask you one quick question. Up on right now, where we had the up on off of Graybeard, where we had the mud slide, the dirt slide back there. now?
Swanee.
Yeah, Swanee. Where are we at on that? We're still nowhere, right?
Right now, and I spoke with Alex about this before he left. They were still trying to gain some sort of acquisition of property right there or something, because, there's three different property owners right there. And
Right.
our property actually goes about 4 or 5 feet off the edge of the blacktop. It's actually pinned and marked with the survey markers. And the rest of it is MRAs and then the people that's above the road there.
Okay.
The last I heard, the lawyer was working on something like that, working with them to try to gain the acquisition.
Our town attorney.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I think they were doing that because we can't really, spend funds on private property,
Right.
especially
Okay.
if we're expecting to try to get a reimbursement from them.
When we have heavy rain like we did today, not as heavy as they said we were going to get, but when we had it, I always think about, is it coming down again? All right.
Barry, so we're still in street and paving and that area, is that correct? Mayor?
Yeah, we're on the
Okay.
street department.
Yep, all right, so Barry, was it last year that you did, or 2 years ago, the large kind of combined paving? When was the last time you did that large paving? Was it 2 years ago?
I
or
believe
one?
that was 2 years ago.
2 years
Yes, sir.
ago? And again, I know, well, since I've sat on council, seems like each year you've planned out a good, and you've got a map on how you want to pave things. Being the fact that fuel is so high right now and will continue as projected this year, I'm assuming asphalt's probably at record high numbers.
It's climbing daily, yes, sir.
Okay. Would it potentially be beneficial if we were to kick the street paving over and do a sort of maybe twice as big a project next year and potentially see the asphalt down and maybe get a little bit more bang for our dollar?
Well, I do agree that right now, I'm thinking we'll get nowhere near the linear footage out of what we could have got. And next year, there's a chance that we could really gain on it if the prices will drop and go back down, if they'll drop.
Lumber did, so-
Lumber's come
so
down, so if you,
maybe it
diesel fuel
would.
drives everything. And it's a big factor with asphalt paving.
And I would add, those are PAL bill monies that are used for resurfacing, and those monies carry over for, you can carry them actually up to 10 years.
Yeah, that's just building a bank. And like you say, I've got little areas, and that next area I want to work on is what I call the Appalachian Lookout Zone. I made a little map and I like to get, and those are some of the worst roads in town. And if we go in there and do a big area, that would be a good thing like we did before.
Again, it's just a thought, commission, but
I
just
think
thought
it's a
I'd throw
very,
it out.
very good thought, frankly. And one thing I noticed is that we didn't have the water line in Oklahoma funded, yet it just makes a lot more sense to me to put in the water line first so that we don't have a brand new road or make cuts. And I don't know what it's like, put in a water line after the fact here, but I imagine you have to have cuts, and it had,
It is, and the water line is not the entire stretch of the Oklahoma road that we're talking about paving. It's a
Okay.
400, just over a 400-foot
422
stretch,
feet.
422 feet stretch of the road. And it just goes to where the asphalt ends in the grass. It's just to right there. It's not extending it on up the hill. I just lost my train of thought on that.
that's all right. But I do think you just, without knowing the details, it looks to me like if we get the water line in first, we ought to get the water line.
And the reason, what I was thinking about for the water line project is ductile iron pipe that we use is scarce right now. They're actually just almost fighting for it over to supply houses right now. They get a trailer in. If you're not a big spender, which we're just a little guy, if you don't buy a lot of product from them, you're going down on the list to get that ductile iron pipe. Talked about that the other day too. Yes, ma'am.
So if you didn't spend the 174,000 of Powell bill funds for Oklahoma, is there anything that you think is critical that you would spend it on streetwise besides Oklahoma this year, this coming
If
year?
you were wanting to do a paving project, yes, sir, well, I would look at, doing Lookout and a portion of Yale. Going up Lookout would go, I'm wanting to say right about the maintenance shop was where I measured to. And it would start at the intersection of Appalachia.
What about Virginia from Mississippi to Louisiana?
That section there, that's a little further down on my maps, but that section there, we're gonna have to do some surveying and quite a bit of grading. It's one section there, so that one would take a little bit more experience. A real narrow area, curve right there, we'd have to widen out a little bit.
I want, before we leave, I've been in response to some of the residents up on Swanee and been promising them for a couple of years now that something's going to get done. And it's not in the budget. So it seems like we have a responsibility as a town to make sure something's done. That's a scary situation up there. And even though it's private property, don't we have some responsibility to see that they,
No, it's the property
Fix
owner.
that.
You can't do work on.
even
private
if it's
property.
endangering everybody that lives?
The thing I
Mac
think
Road?
we need to do is push Susan Taylor Rash to our attorney to find out where we are on that. I mean, certainly by now, she ought to have some sort of resolution on that being.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's been a
yeah.
few years, so we've been talking
Yeah.
about this. And promising.
That's gonna be an expensive project. That's talking about, I've had several people look at it, a Gabion wall, and it's gonna have some height to it and some length to it, probably, I don't know, about 120 feet.
Would the wall be on MRA's property or on the property owner's property?
It's probably gonna start on where the MRA property line starts, because it's gonna have to start off of that shoulder of the road, which takes it completely off of us, off of our right of way. Then it'll be built back at an angle towards their driveway.
So we need to talk to MRA too about it.
I've got a note for that.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other questions of Barry?
On the Texas Road Bridge repair and replacement, the budgeted, suggested budget funds for that are 101,000. We had 102 this year, and this is actually going down. Is it going down because your guys are going to do some of that work? Or did you feel that they can't do that and we need to go with a contractor to do everything?
We're looking at us doing quite a bit of the work,
Okay.
is what I'm looking at. Like I say, I'm hoping to meet with the inspectors and see their thoughts on it and go from there. And looks like we're gonna do quite a bit of it.
Barry,
Those-
when did you say the inspectors were coming?
They're supposed to be here sometime the end of June, and they haven't set a date with me yet. I'm waiting on an email or something from them.
If you can do some of the work, is this enough money to complete phase one?
Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
Do we have any bids on that? I know the one bid we got,
We haven't sent
rejected.
it- We've not sent it out
We've
for a
not
rebid.
done anything on that because I'd actually like to see how much we can do in the house. If we can do most of it in-house, I'm gonna try to do that.
There's some welding and stuff that Barry will have to contract out, right, Barry? Didn't you talk about some welding?
We're gonna try to do that also.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, anybody, any other questions?
Barry, I appreciate you, for me, telling me exactly what part of Oklahoma needed to be resurfaced. And that is, I don't like to drive it, but I walk it quite a bit, and it has a lot of potholes.
So where does that paving start?
Paving for Oklahoma, it will start at the apron of Appalachia in Oklahoma. And it'll run around. Now, we got two sections. We got current asphalt, which would run to where the asphalt stops. And then we got what we call the new road paving, which would run up and tie in to Lookout just there at the old leaf dump.
And that's not part of this 174.
Yes, sir. It's all there.
So what would that be?
That
Cost
would,
wise?
well, that's both the new road paving and the current paving together would be that right at that 174.
So the 174 does include the new road paving.
Yes, sir.
So with the water line, we'll be spending nearly $250,000 on Oklahoma.
Right at it. Yes, sir. But that's a very long road. I've got the sheet back there somewhere. It's like 1,300 1,350 feet, linear feet of current. And what's it say down there for the new road paving?
893 feet.
893 feet. So that's a pretty good stretch of paving right there. And it's wide. It's one of our, when you get on up through there, it's one of our widest roads.
how traveled is that road?
Here lately, it's heavily traveled. We get a lot of the hiking traffic through there.
Again, I've been on it multiple times. It's due, and I'd love to see it get completed all the way through there and get, I know that was something we've been talking about for 6 years, to get all these roads paved. And so again, I'm not looking to strike it. I'm just thinking, could it possibly save us money if we just combine things and just do a very large project next year? That, again, that's kind of where I'm leaning.
And to touch base on what we talked about earlier, $174,000 with the fuel prices going up, we might not get that linear footage out of it. If it's going up, we may not get it because this is bigger, about a month and a half or so back. So lots changed since then.
Asphalt is fuel based.
I still don't have it straight. Are we going to pave and then have to dig up? Is that what was said? We know.
No, man, we can put it all. We could put Oklahoma until we can, till the ductile comes back into, to where we can easily get it. And then we're going to do the water line in-house also. So when that comes time to do that, when it's available for that product, then we can do the paving.
And where does the water line run from where to where?
Let's see. Where the green Clegg house is on Oklahoma?
Before the turn?
There's a fire hydrant right there before you go into the dip, go up the hill towards the gravel road. It starts right there at that fire hydrant and it just goes around the curve to where the asphalt is. And it's
So-
just extending it around through there. So you've got, fire protection. And there's a couple of old services that meander up through the ditches, and they're getting some age on them, and we need to move them services closer to the residences. You know,
So if the MRA owns a whole bunch of properties up there, if you go up Oklahoma in that direction, up on the left, up on the bank, would that water service serve, that you would put in that water line, serve them as well? in the
That
future?
service would get closer. And at that time, I guess if they decided to do some development or something, that would be a time for maybe looking at assessment or something.
Yeah.
Something that, I just want to extend at least fire service and, you know, move them services up that way
To the end of the.
to the end of
what's
the road.
paved now.
That gets it up to that certain point where if somebody does decide to do something on it through there, a development wise, it can be
Thanks.
looked at.
Other questions? Ready to move on to sanitation?
So are we going to strike?
Oklahoma? I
Yeah.
think so. Is that the consensus of the commission? Moving on to the low water line.
Prices
Okay.
come down?
Any questions on sanitation? That is Recreation Department. That's a big budget.
And you'll notice there's a $2,500 contribution to land care.
See that.
I noticed that Land Care gives us back a contribution. What's that? Oh,
You're gonna be okay with $20,000 in tree maintenance, Barry, as far as you know?
Yes, sir. And that's dealing with trees that we can't reach safely or, you know, large storm events, or, you know, we had to shut down Assembly Drive a few weeks ago to take out a lot of trees. It dealt with quite a bit of that we couldn't actually access or do safely.
Okay.
Barry, when I was tree commissioner, we had to take down a lot of trees and went over budget every year because they're all sort of aging at the same time and coming down at the same time. So you don't think that we're going to increase the number of trees?
You took out 30 on Assembly Drive this year.
Yeah,
At this point in time, I think we're okay.
I think we're okay.
Yes.
All right.
Okay.
Where have we been the past few years with the 2,500 on their land care committee? What number do you know have we had in the budget the past few years?
What was last year's? 25, I think.
So it's been consistent at 25?
Darlene, would you check? Because I wasn't sure it was 25 last year.
I will check it, but I think we did increase it last year. I think it was the year prior that we dropped it to, I want to say $1,000.
Okay, Water Department.
Barry, I believe this would fall under yours. I feel like we've talked about generators for a while, and I think you in years past have worked out where we've rented if we got in a pinch or whatever. Right at close to $100,000, just shy of that for two. Could we live with one this year and keep our town protected if we did have a situation where, you know, we lost power for extended period of time? And I know that probably a little bit more work on your crew, but is that something that we could live with this year?
Yep. The reason I put 2 generators in there is we have our pressure and open pressure system. We have 2 tanks on Appalachian and 1 on Harmon. The wells that fill in tanks are completely separate of each other. And I put 2 in, that way we can run each system simultaneously. We could alternate with 1 generator and keep the town with water if we had an outage for an extended period of time. We
Right.
could do that. It just, like you say, it would just mean monitoring or maybe, letting the generator set and rest for a little bit, then hooking it up to the other system. But we could alternate that. Yes.
And again, for the record, these generators are for that emergency situation.
Yes, sir.
It's
These
not,
are for an emergency situation to, keep the tanks full, and keep water running up here. Previously, we had an agreement worked out where we could borrow a generator, and I don't think that agreement is going to be standing much longer, if at all. I think that generator has been sold and moved on. What they have is not compatible with what we've got up here.
Do you have to physically move the generator from pumps?
Yes,
Well,
ma'am.
well-
It's a trailer type generator, and you just have to, we've slowly over the years upfitted the wells to where we can just back right up to it, run a coax out, and hook it into the system, flip a switch, crank it up. It'll run the pumps.
And do you have to run the generator all the time, or is there a battery backup, or?
It's a diesel generator.
Oh.
And,
So
You
if
know,
it's
usually-
not running,
usually
then
with
you
the-
don't have water.
do what?
If it's not running, you don't have water.
You would have water for, say, 7 days, 8 days.
Oh,
So it would be,
So you take the generators to the two storage facilities? You
No,
don't
sir.
take them to the
we take
well
them to
sites and
the
pump
well
up?
sites.
Oh, to the well sites?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yeah, yes.
all
sir.
right.
I think we have 7 wells that feed Harmony and 4 wells, 3 wells. that
So
feed
you'd have to
Pathway.
run them around the different
We just have to move
wells.
to different sites, yes, sir. And we've got a couple of wells that are really good yielding wells, and that would be the ones that we pull off of to, in emergency situations, because we know what we can get out of that well. And it would be okay to move it from one.
And where would you store them when they're not being used?
We would store them inside the facility, that way they didn't weather or nothing happens. That's another plus of having that facility.
Savings of about $9,000.
Well,
Seventy-
actually, it'd be around 48,872.
That's what we just did one.
Because we're using, 18,000 would come out of the water fund with the remainder coming out of the ARPA funds. So you would free those monies up for ARPA for another project. if the
Do you
commission
have
so desires.
projects in mind for these other funds?
Oh, I'm sure that staff can come up with some
Okay.
ideas along with the commissioners.
Darlene, how long do we have to spend ARPA funds?
We have until 2026 to spend the funds, but 2024 to encumber them.
So we don't have to spend them right now.
And I'm not saying, we don't turn right back around next year and put a generator back on there. I'm just, again,
Sure.
trying to say, where's the best place we can spend some money? Or the best way we can spend what we have this year. And
So all those in favor of buying one generator instead of two this year, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. So we'll do one. All right, I'm looking at the capital outlay projects right now. We've cut Oklahoma Road out. Cut out $174,000 there. Cut out one generator. Yeah, there it is. Anything else on there you want to discuss?
Can I just ask a question of Barry? No street paving whatsoever? Because $174,000 for street paving is POW bill money. So we actually have that right now. And I guess my question is, I believe last year we didn't allocate any funding from POW bill for street paving. So do you want to eliminate the full 174 or are there some streets that,
I thought we asked Barry that and there wasn't anything that was,
Part of the reason is though, just the cost of, just the cost of paving right now because of the price of asphalt. It's got to be out, just out of sight because of fuel costs right now.
I just-
I'm
I'm
just
understand-
asking, I'm only asking to clarify because I
Sure.
have to move
sure,
funds because it's different from allocating fund balance.
right.
So I just want to make sure that, you know, Barry didn't have this.
And just
in
for the
mind.
record, because just so I'm clear, you know, I'm picturing this money just being moved, not lost, just moved to next year, that same 174, and then we add to it. It's not correct,
That's correct. It's
Okay.
174 that will be in the reserve
correct.
as of the end of this year.
Right.
And then next year, roughly $40,000 to $43,000 will be added to that.
Very good.
Okay.
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 So Darlene, is the 174 an accumulation of past years? And that happens to be what our accumulated balance is in Powell Fund?
That will be the accumulated balance at the end of fiscal 22.
Okay.
Yes.
There's no danger that we lose funds because we're not using them.
With Powell bill money, you have 10 years to hold on to money in the fund. And then that's when they start taking away.
They don't look at it and say, you're not using it, you don't need it.
Well, after 10
After
years,
10
if you've not
years.
spent it, what they will do, they would withhold any other future allocations.
I
until you
guarantee
start
you
drawing
we'll
it
spend
down.
it within 10
Yeah, I
years.
don't think we're in danger of that.
Yeah.
So 40,000 is not a huge budget to add to the 174 that you're talking about, doing a whole bunch of big work next year. Would we spend our own, if there was a favorable fund balance, would we use our own budgeted funds for that along with Powell bill funds?
You could do that, but I would discourage that action when you have monies allocated from state shared revenues. But you could do that to answer your question. Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking we're not gonna, I was thinking we'd double it for next year. And prices would go down and we get more,
You can do that. Yes, sir. You could do
but
that.
it doesn't make sense.
Usually the only time a municipality will spend its own funds is if they need it for economic development to extend the road or
sir.
something that the Powell bill won't cover. But usually the state, if it's economic development, will come up with the money somehow.
Yes, sir.
Anything else on the capital outlay that you wanted to talk about? Got the tank inspection still in there. We got the water line replacement on Oklahoma.
No, that was stricken by staff. That was part of the CIP. If you'll look at it,
The water line's gone.
yes, sir.
Okay. So all we've got is underwater is the 32.2 under the tank inspection, under planning and zoning, 11,000 for the comp plan. Under street paving, we've got Texas Road Extension. That's the barrel, that's the culvert Barry up there. And then we've got Texas Road Pedestrian Bridge Project conversion. And then under the police department, we've got body cams.
But we have one generator, 48.
Right, one generator.
I'm a little worried that we're postponing paving because we think gas cup prices might come down. I don't think they've ever come down. Think they will?
I think so.
But what if we left it in and didn't schedule it till June of next year?
It's just a matter of leaving it in and carrying it over if you don't use it.
That's correct.
Same
Yes, sir.
thing as taking it out now.
We could definitely leave it in and see, and plan on the spring paving. And get on the list
Same thing.
and, get up front. And gas prices drop. Do something.
And maybe we don't do all of Oklahoma.
go over whatever leftover funds from the one cent before, or free water.
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is, we could definitely do it in sections.
That lets us be flexible. I think that's a good idea. As long as we
The other thing about the PELP, I think this is my personal opinion, just dealing with the state. I think it's a good idea to use the funds that they've given us for the street paving. And also, as far as PAL bill goes, from an accounting standpoint, I cannot open those funds up, for lack of a better way to put it, until the audit is done. Because the auditors need to see that $43,000 that we get each year as revenue. They want to see that separate and apart. It has to sit there until the audit is done. And as you know, we're 2 years behind now. So 21 still isn't rolled into the fund. 22 still isn't rolled into the fund. So that 174,000 represents funds available to us at the end of the next audit, which is October 31st, 2022.
That's 2 years worth of funds.
Correct.
was really tied up until October 31st.
Exactly, yes. So I
But we
just
did
wanted-
some paving last year up at the college.
And
I
we
don't think
beside
it
the
it
library.
wasn't Cal bill though.
Very, my years run together anymore, so you're probably right.
So again, it doesn't hurt to leave those funds there because at this point, I can't move them anyway. So if it, November, December rolls along and you decide you want to wait another year, that's not going to hurt anything. The money will stay there in reserve.
I like the plan. I'm worried about all these big purchases snowballing. And all of a sudden we need a chipper and a dump truck and a police car and a tractor.
Folks, I've run out of pages.
You may be correct. Missouri may have been done last year. And I believe I did it out of the repair and widening because it was under a 40-something thousand dollars. They just pointed that out. I'm pretty sure you were right. We did do Missouri. We done a little bit of drainage. There you there. Like a steel trap.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks, David. I've run out of pages, folks. Anybody have anything else they want to talk about that's in the budget? I appreciate all the hard work and the thought and the good thoughts that have gone into preparing this budget. So between Ben and Darlene, if y'all will tweak it now and we'll be ready to present it in next month's meeting.
Yes, sir. Thank
Okay.
you, Mayor.
We
Commissioner.
have a public hearing, don't we?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I think staff deserves a great thank you for the effort you all put forth for the last 2 years in very, very difficult circumstances.
Yeah.
So thank you to all.
I will entertain a motion to adjourn the budget workshop.
I move to adjourn.
I have a motion from Commissioner Alexander, have a second from Commissioner Fouché. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carry. We are adjourned.